One day a delegation came from Hims to Medina and they paid a visit to Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, the Caliph. And Sayyidina Umar asked them to list for him the names of the poor people in Hims. They make a list, so Sayyidina Umar was aiming to send them help. And when Sayyidina Umar was reading the list, he was reading and then he found Sa'id bin Amir. He asked, who is Sa'id bin Amir? They said, our governor. He said, your governor is poor. They said, by Allah, ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Days pass and no fire is lit up in his house. They lit up fire to cook. And they said, days pass without lighting fire. That means days pass without cooking in his house. He didn't have enough money to cook food for himself and for his family. Sayyidina Umar was touched by that and he cried. And he sent money to the poor people and to Sayyidina Sa'id. And Sayyidina Umar asked the people to give the money to Sa'id and tell him that this is the money that Umar ibn Khattab sent you to help you live a better life. When they reached back in Hims, they gave the money to Sa'id. He opened the bag, he looked at it, he found money. He started pushing it. And he said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Kept repeating that. And that means indeed we belong to Allah. And to Him is our return. This we say when we have a problem, a big problem that dear one died, we have a big issue, we say Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. So money came to him and he felt that he is in a big trouble. His wife came to him and said, what happened? When she noticed that he was saying that, she said, what happened? Amata Amirul Mu'mineen? Did the Caliph pass away? Sayyidina Umar. He said, no, something worse than that. Then she said, did the Muslim army lose any battle? He said, even worse. She said, what is worse than that? He said, dunya, the worldly gain of this life, interferes to spoil my akhirah. The worldly gain interferes in my life to spoil my eternal, everlasting future. Then his wife was at that time, according to the books of history, was almost 14 years old. So look at the righteous, pious young girl in Islam. She said, get rid of it. He asked her, will you help me? She said, definitely, of course. He showed her the money and both of them distributed the 1,000 dinar of gold, and they did not leave for themselves even a penny. Both of them. He, Sayyidina Sa'id, even was young. Radiallahu anhu. This is not an invitation to poverty in Islam. Sayyidina Sa'id radiallahu anhu had his allowance. He had the salary that he did not accept to take. He wanted to be governor for Allah. And number 3, he had 1,000 dinar of gold that he distributed. So this is not an invitation to poverty. He was not poor, but he was using that money for Allah to build his eternal future everlasting life. He realized that money never makes people, but people make money. He used that money for Allah to make him closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Though he himself and his wife, they were young. But this is how young people in Islam should be. Unfortunately, nowadays, we always use the word of teenagers to justify all the heedlessness that the young people do. But if you look to Islam, if you look to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah did not excuse, did not justify for the young people to do any reckless actions. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam dealt with them, with the young people, like men. Most of the companions of the Prophet were young. Those who were similar to the age of the Prophet or older than him, they were very few. But most of the companions, they were younger than Rasulullah, they were young. Sayyidina Anas bin Malik came to the Prophet when he was 10. Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud was almost 12. And so on. Many of the companions were young, some of them below 18. So now, unfortunately, we use the word teenagers, but Rasulullah did not use it. He considered them like men. He appointed Rasulullah ﷺ appointed Osama bin Zayd to be the leader of an army when Sayyidina Osama radiallahu anhu was 17 or 18 years old. And in his army was Abu Bakr and Umar and the great companions. Rasulullah considered him as a man. And Rasulullah gave him the instructions. He went, it is not an army to make, a simple defense in Medina, but they had to travel to Jordan, almost to Jordan. And he followed the instruction of Rasulullah. He went to Jordan, he attained victory, and he came back. Young people, they are considered like men in Islam. We should not give them excuses. And not only Rasulullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when anyone, whether girl or boy, reach the age of puberty, whether 12, 13, 14, more or less, the angels start recording the reward and the sins, just like the one who is 50, 60, and 70. No difference. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deals with us in that way. Do you think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an oppressor? Definitely no, subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we misunderstand this reality. When someone, a boy or a girl, reach the age of puberty, no matter 12, 13, 14, at any time, the angels record their sins and reward. No difference between them and the one who is 70 or 80 years old. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considers no difference. But we think that, they are still very young. Many of our young people reach the age of 20 and 25, and they spend most of the day playing games, electronic games. And we justify they are still young. We are killing their production by justifying the lack of responsibility. We just say they are still young, but they are productive. Allah is not dealing with them like children. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala held them accountable. The angels record their deeds just like 70, 40, 60, 80 years old. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned to us, gave us examples in the Quran about young girls. Sayyidah Maryam radiallahu anha, the mother of Prophet Jesus alayhi salam. According to the books of history, the angel Gabriel came to her and told her that she was pregnant immediately after her first period, that was almost 12 years old. This is the girl in Islam. Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us her story? To take her as an example. She was 12 and the angel came and spoke to her. And an example of young boys, if we call them boys now, is Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, Prophet Joseph. When his brothers threw him in the well, he was almost 12 years old. When they threw him, the hand of Gabriel alayhi salam was under his legs. And at that moment, he received the first revelation from Allah. He was almost 12. So we should deal with our children as mature. Guide them, channel their production, help them. We should not justify their, negative deeds by saying they are still young. We are killing their production.